Electricast.
The Hilton sale is on. Now through September 29th, you can save up to 20% on stays this fall and beyond. Long weekends, last-minute getaways, holiday gatherings. There's a Hilton stay for all of them. More moments, more experiences, more destinations. Now 20% off for a limited time because it matters where you stay. Don't wait. Book by September 29th and save up to 20% at Hilton.com. Terms apply. Hilton for the stay.
Tuesday on NBC, Jimmy Fallon and Bozoma St. John host the highly anticipated new competition show.
I hired 10 creatives from all walks of life. They will be battling it out to see who can impress the world's biggest brands.
This is a huge opportunity.
This is the battle for the next big idea.
This is not play.
We're spending millions of dollars.
I'm so excited to embark on this adventure with all of you.
May the best idea win!
On Brand with Jimmy Fallon. Series premiere Tuesday on NBC.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to our Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie, and for the last few weeks, you've probably noticed that we've spent a lot of time unpacking the hidden costs of saying yes from guilt, of giving away too much energy, and of treating boundaries like walls, like barriers instead of anchors for your peace. And if you've been listening in closely, you know that every conversation circled back to one simple but sticky truth, that saying no isn't always the hard part. It's everything else that comes with it. And that's why today's episode is going to be just a little bit different, because instead of just sharing my perspective, I really want to take you inside the very questions that women like us are already asking out loud in public forums. One of the things I was doing some research around was the idea of the guilt that we carry, that we often feel when we say no. And today I want to really lean into the questions that what I found and answer some questions that real people like us are actually asking, the ones I know maybe you've even asked yourself. Questions that put a spotlight on ourselves. What we ask ourselves things like, how do I say no without over-explaining myself, right? What if they push back? And what do I do if the guilt still lingers afterward? And so to bring this closer to home, I want you to picture a moment we've all faced. And I say all because I truly believe that at some point the word no has affected all of us at one point in our lives, even if we found a way to finally stand strong in our yes. It's that split second where your heart says no, like your gut is telling you, no, this isn't right, but your mouth hesitates, right? Because your brain speaks up. It starts to chime in. So I want to walk you through that before we get into the questions I found. And I want to dig into that just a little bit. I want to anchor you with a story, if you will, to kind of get this going so you kind of get a little bit more understanding about it and get more, insight into what it is that I really want us to really, all of us, to understand when it comes to why it's so hard for us to say no. So picture this, okay? Let's say it's Friday afternoon, okay? In fact, it is Friday afternoon when you're listening to this, and you finally have a clear block of time on your calendar, right? So it's Friday afternoon and you finally have a clear block of time on your calendar, and it's the first one all week, maybe even the first one in weeks. And you've been looking forward to shutting down early, maybe going for a walk and having that unhurried dinner with your family. And all of a sudden, a Slack message pings in right as you're about to shut down for the day. It's from one of your team members asking, hey, do you have a minute? I need help with something. And I think if you looked at it, it shouldn't take long. I really feel like you would be able to, hash this out a lot quicker than I could. Now, it's the same team member who usually leaves things last minute until it's crisis mode. And they know that you never say no. In fact, you're known for that. They expect you to never say no. And in that split second, you know that the real answer is no, like it should be no for you. You can actually feel it in your body. Your plate's full. You've got so much going on right now. You're tired and it feels like forever. Like I said, since you've had time to just take a moment for yourself and actually have a nice, relaxing dinner with your family without your mind racing on unfinished tasks. And you promised yourself that today would be the day you'd close your laptop on time. And yet, instead of a clean no, here's what you say. Oh, sure, I can take a look at that later tonight once I wrap up a few things. Which means it's going to cut into your nice, relaxing dinner with your family, which leads into family game night, right? This is the night that you guys usually have your dinner together. It's game night. It's Friday night and it's fun. You love it. And even after you've said it, you can feel the knot in your stomach and the mental loop starts up. Oh my gosh, what did I just do? Oh, now my night's gone. I wanted to have a nice, relaxing dinner before we started game night. And I promised the kids that tonight we would not miss out on another family game night. It's a promise I've been breaking more and more. What is wrong with me? Why can't I just say no and be done with it without carrying all this guilt? See how you're beating yourself up? It's like this is what happens. We go into that guilt mode and then our brain starts saying, well, yeah, because look at what you're doing. This is a pattern for you. So here, I'll chime in and help you beat yourself up. Or maybe your mental loop sounds more like this. Oh no, am I being selfish to cancel my downtime or for wishing I had said no? Should I have explained more about how tired I am, how much I've been holding together, that I have, like, this is family night, and then asked if it could wait until Monday? Or is that selfish of me to even think that way? Maybe I should just do it already. It's probably not going to be that big of a deal. And I'm really good at pushing things out quickly. And again, your evening, possibly your whole weekend is disrupted because you spend the rest of the night replaying the conversation, wishing you'd stood your ground, wishing you could stop breaking promises to the ones you love, and wishing you hadn't traded away the one thing you needed most, your peace. And by the end of the night, your yes hasn't protected your peace at all, right? It's drained it. It's kept you from enjoying time with your loved ones. It has you taking that weight and guilt into your weekend, right? Because you're breaking yet another promise. And instead of resetting, it has you taking that weight and guilt into your weekend. You're breaking another promise, not only to them, but to yourself, because you promised that this would be the day that you would finish on time and that nothing was going to interrupt it. And so instead of resetting so that you feel rested, instead of spending time with your family and having some fun, your weekend's disrupted. And by Monday morning, you're already running on empty. Sound familiar? Here's the thing. Most of us think our guilt comes from saying no, especially if we believe that we're being selfish if we say it, or if we believe that we're not allowed to say it. And the truth is, it's not the no that weighs the heaviest. It's the way we replay it over and over in our heads afterwards that drains us the most, leaving you feeling anxious, restless, and even more disconnected from the peace you were trying to protect in the first place. So that's what we're diving into today. That's why I wanted to kind of set this up for you. Because if that is you, this has been your MO, I really wanted to dive into this week being more about going out into search mode and looking for what some of you are saying repeatedly over and over, asking, because you're asking for help. You're asking for almost like validation that you should be able to say no with confidence. And that's why, again, as I said, I want to dive into that today, because when I looked at the questions that some of us are really asking about saying no, I realized they're the same ones you've probably asked yourself too. Questions like, how do I say no without sounding selfish? How do I say no without feeling like an asshole? Yeah, you heard me. How do I say no when it makes more work for someone else? And how do I say no without letting people down? These questions are real, they're lived, and they're the exact moments that keep us replaying conversations in our head way after it's over, second guessing and carrying the guilt long after the words have left our mouth, right? And that's why I wanted to take today's episode in a different direction, because it's one thing for me to give you frameworks, but I really feel it's another thing entirely to answer the exact questions we're actually asking out loud. The ones that show up in conversations, whether it's with your clients, because now they're asking for more time, more of your time on your off days, and you don't say no, or in online communities when people are asking for things and you chime in saying, hey, I can help, or in those late night Google searches when you're asking and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I keep seeing this. I don't know how to stop. And if you've ever caught yourself asking the same thing, I want you to know that you're not alone, okay? Because I've done this so many times. I've said no. If you've been listening to my episodes for this past month, I've been talking a lot about how saying yes out of guilt instead of alignment really can mess with you, or the hidden energy costs of saying yes all the time, and why especially boundaries that we put in place. Boundaries are so important, but a lot of the time people use boundaries. They're using barriers thinking they're boundaries. And I explained that last week. But yeah, it's just, I started thinking about it. It's like, wow, there's just so much that we could really learn if we stepped back a moment and looked at our patterns. So as I said, today I wanted to jump into some of the questions that I found, and I'm going to unpack them here. So the first question is, how do I say no without sounding selfish? Now, the fear here is real, right? Oh my gosh, if I say no, they'll think I don't care. I'll look selfish. They'll think I'm selfish, uncaring, maybe even ungrateful that they're asking me in the first place. And they might start seeing me as someone they can't rely on anymore. And that's the loop that runs in the background, right? The belief that the only way to prove your worth or to show that your heart's in the right place is to always say yes. But here's the hidden cost of that belief. Every time you swallow your no, you're not actually protecting the relationship that you have with them. You're actually eroding your relationship with yourself, because what you do is you end up using your best energy for things that don't align with your priorities for right now. So you don't show up for them also as your best version of yourself, because you're kind of resentful. You may say you're not, but it shows in your actions. People can feel your energy. And slowly you start to resent both the person for asking you, and you start resenting yourself for agreeing to something you didn't want to do, or you didn't have the time or energy to do in the first place. So instead of feeling clear, you feel scattered. And instead of feeling grounded, you feel pulled in every direction. And the truth is, it's not selfish to say no. It's self-respect. It's honoring your own capacity. And the only way your yes has power is if your no has protection. Because when every request gets a yes, your yes loses its meaning. It stops feeling like generosity and starts leaning towards more feeling like obligation, chipping away at your peace, leaving you drained of your energy and scattering your focus. Think of it like this. I'm going to give you a little visual here. Think of it like your phone battery. If you keep every app running at once, your charge drains fast, right? Well, it's the same thing. Saying yes to everything is like keeping every app open. You look helpful, but you've got nothing left when it really matters. Yes, I know. You're thinking it feels good to be the go-to person because it reassures you that you're important. But isn't that just leaning on external validation for your worth? And isn't stretching yourself thin just to appear endlessly accommodating while your time, energy, and well-being pay the price? Isn't that the exact opposite of living an extraordinary life? Being able to say no with calm confidence, knowing you've protected your peace without pushing people away, allows you to walk away from those moments steady inside, without the guilt, without second guessing, and with your relationships still intact. So here's a simple phrase you can use the next time you feel that selfish fear creeping in. I want to give you some things that you could say. You can just tailor these to fit you how you would say them. But I just wanted to give you something that you could use in those moments when you feel like that selfish fear creeping in. I'd love to support you on XYZ, But right now, I don't have the bandwidth to give this the attention it deserves. I need to pass this time. Thank you for understanding. Or you can say something like, I can't take this on right now, but I appreciate you thinking of me. It really means a lot. Now, this is for something that if somebody is asking you to chime in and to be maybe collaborate on something, to maybe brainstorm a new idea. And you could even go a step further saying, like, it doesn't work for me right now, but maybe we could revisit it at a later date. Just because right now I'm really stretched thin. I have priorities right now that I really need to finish. And if I add too much, I'm just going to be scattered and I won't bring the focus and the determination and my best self to doing this. So right now, I have to pass. Again, these don't sound cold. They're clear. They honor your energy. They let the other person know that it's not about a lack of you caring. It's about that your capacity. And that's the difference between looking selfish and practicing self-trust. Which brings us to another question that I'm also seeing come up often when I've been doing my research. One that cuts even deeper than selfish, because sometimes it's not about how others see you at all. It's about how you see yourself. And that question is, how do I say no without feeling like an asshole? This is exactly how she put it. And it cuts deep, doesn't it? Right? She's calling herself a name, like really being critical, super critical. And when you hear it, you realize there's often, for me at least, when I read it and I read it out loud, I realized that there's really so much more underneath the layers, right? Layers of how we see ourselves, not just how others see us. So she's coming from the point of view like, she's thinking she's an asshole. So there's more to it. There's like that, as I said, there's layers deep to it. And here's a fear underneath this. And she's probably thinking, or you could think if this was you, if I say no, it means I'm being mean. I'm letting people down. I'm not being a good friend, a good partner, a great leader, or even a good enough mom. And if I'm not bending over backwards, then maybe I'm not kind. Maybe I really am an asshole. Right? It's that internal spiral where you mistake guilt as proof that you've done something wrong instead of realizing that it's proof you're breaking a long-standing pattern. Like your brain is starting to like feel uncomfortable because you're questioning like, ooh, if you're thinking about this, you question it and you're saying, wow, this is how I feel. Why? If this is my inner dialogue. Why am I feeling like this? Why am I saying these things to myself? That pattern of saying yes to prove your worth, of equating self-sacrifice with being good, of believing you have to bend to be loved, that when you understand that this is where you've been coming from, when you do start to do something different, that guilt shows up, right? Not because you're wrong. It's not because you're wrong. It's not because you're an asshole, quote unquote, but because you're interrupting an old cycle, an old habit, an old pattern. And your brain is designed to keep you safe, to keep you from getting hurt, to keep you from danger. And it doesn't understand that this was your MO and why are you now changing it? But here's what that guilt actually does. It tricks you into backpedaling on decisions that you know were right. So if you said no, then it's like, ooh, I'm going to backpedal on that. Let me revisit. Are they feeling okay? Was I an asshole? Maybe I was an asshole. Maybe did I sound like an asshole? Was I? I mean, I'm using that word very loosely here. I'm saying it a lot because this is what goes through our brains when we get to this point. So instead, you backpedal, you say yes when you're already maxed out, your time, your energy, everything's maxed out. It pushes you into late nights, finishing something you didn't have space for. And every time you do that, you don't actually protect the relationships you care about, and you erode your trust in yourself because you start believing that the only way for you to be seen as good or good enough is to abandon your own needs. Now, the truth is, guilt doesn't mean you did something wrong, okay? Guilt just means you stepped outside of the habit of people-pleasing, yes, because a lot of that comes from people-pleasing. It comes from our childhood, growing up wanting to please our parents, wanting to please our peers, wanting to please our teachers, wanting to please maybe our boss, wanting to please if we have our own business, to please our team members, so that they know we're a good boss, to please our clients, potential clients. It's all of that, right? It's all of that where you are looking outside for that validation that what you're doing, that you are good enough, that you are good at what you do, and that, is it okay? It's almost like you're looking for permission. Like, is it okay to say no right now? Think of it this way. Here's another visual for you. Think of it like this. You're at the gym, you're strengthening your muscles, right? You're going through a weight training circuit, and you start to feel the discomfort in your muscles, like you're sore afterwards, after working out. That's not a red flag. That's a sign that your muscles waking up and that you're growing, that it's growing, which means that saying no isn't harsh. When we bring it back to say the simple act of saying no, it's not harsh. It's not selfish. It doesn't make you a bad person for saying it. It's honest. It's an aligned choice because you're honoring what you need instead of abandoning yourself to keep the peace. So what you really want to be able to do is to hold your no without the blame spiral that follows, to be able to say, I can't take that on right now, and walk away feeling steady inside instead of replaying the conversation for days and feeling guilty and selfish that you dared to protect your time. You want to be able to protect your peace and keep your relationships intact. But here's the truth. I want you to understand this around the act of saying no. People who truly matter to you and who you truly matter to as well, they will respect your no just as much as your yes. That's why it's so important to have people in your corner who reflect back your truth, not your guilt. People who remind you that your worth isn't tied to how much you do, but in who you are. And the good news is you don't have to choose between being clear and being kind. Okay, the right words can honor both your no and the connection. So here's something you can use the next time guilt creeps in after saying no, and your mind tries to convince you that you're being selfish, letting someone down, that you're being mean, a bad person. You could say, I'd love to help, but I don't have the bandwidth to give this attention it deserves right now. Can we circle back a little bit later and see if maybe a later time, a later date works better for both of us? Or maybe if it feels, again, keeping it short and clean, you can just say, that doesn't work for me right now, but I truly appreciate you asking me. Let's revisit it at a later time, right? You're not being cold. You're not being harsh. You're just being simple, honest, and reminding both of you that your no isn't about pulling away or being unavailable. It's about showing up with honesty and respect without sacrificing yourself in the process. Okay? Now, the next one I want to dig into is another version of guilt that doesn't get talked about enough. Sometimes it's not about sounding selfish or looking selfish or even about feeling guilty afterwards. Sometimes the guilt sneaks in because you know that if you say no, it might mean extra work for someone else. Oh, this one hits hard. The question of how do I say no when it makes more work for someone else? That question came up. This one right here definitely hit home for me, especially when I was working in the corporate environment, wanting to make sure that I could do as much as I could to take it on my plate so that it wouldn't make it hard for someone else. And if you're a people pleaser, the one who always goes that extra mile to make sure that everyone else is comfortable, then you'll probably have asked this question before, or you can actually relate to that. This is how you've been. And here's where it gets tricky. When your kindness turns into a constant pressure to carry more than you actually can, that's when fear creeps in that if you say no, someone else will pay the price. That's what you believe. You think someone else is going to pay the price and that you're a bad person for letting that happen. And that's when the guilt loop plays in your head. If I say no, someone else will have to pick up the slack, and that's not fair. They're already carrying a lot, and I don't want to be the one who makes their day harder. So if I just push through, if I take on the extras, then at least no one else has to suffer. But you forgot that there is a person that's going to suffer, and that's you. But it's this belief that your worth comes from absorbing the weight so that no one else has to, even if it costs you more than you have to give. And while it comes from a generous place, it's generosity that ends up costing you far more than you realize. Here's the thing. Every time you absorb more than your share, you're not actually protecting the team, the project, or the relationship. all you're really doing is trading your clarity, your bandwidth, and your well-being for the short-term relief of others so that they don't feel the inconvenience in the moment. But that relief for them comes at the expense of your energy reserves. And eventually, that trade shows up as resentment, exhaustion, maybe even mistakes you wouldn't normally make. And so instead of feeling like the dependable one, you start feeling like you're drowning. And ironically, the very people you wanted to protect end up experiencing a version of you that's distracted, drained, and disconnected. The truth is, you're not responsible for carrying every plate that gets handed to you. You're only responsible for managing your own capacity, how you show up in the things you say and do, because that's what allows you to keep showing up strong for your clients, for your team and your family without burning out in the process. So saying no doesn't mean you don't care. It just means that you care enough to protect the energy that lets you deliver your best when and where it counts. That's what we all crave, right? It's to be able to say no in those moments, in the moments that matter to us without spiraling into guilt. To be able to say no in those moments when we know no is really the right answer for us, and to trust that you're not abandoning people when you say no. It's just understanding that you're preserving the steadiness that will allow you to serve them better in the long run, to be able to walk away from the ask without that pit in your stomach, knowing that you made a clear choice that protects both your peace and your capacity. So here's a simple phrase you can lean on in those moments when you feel that tug of war between protecting your emotional and energetic bandwidth and not wanting to leave someone else hanging. You can say, I can't take that on right now, but here's when I could give it my full focus. So you're saying it's not right now, but you're leaving the door open because you know you'll have availability at a later time, right? So you're not treating it as an urgent, like I have to drop everything moment right now, which will disrupt everything for you. You're saying, listen, I can't take this on right now, but this is when I can do it so that you could get my full focus. I can help you with what you need. Or you can say, I don't have the capacity to do this justice right now. Would it work to revisit it on? And you just give it a timeline. So you're asking them, will this timeline work for you? Okay. Both options are clear, they're honest, and they're respectful. They protect your bandwidth without burning a bridge, showing that your no is an act of alignment, not avoidance. And at the same time, you're creating a bridge for when it truly works for both of you, honoring both your time and theirs. And that brings us to the final question that I want to cover today. And it's another question that I'm seeing come up a lot. Sometimes, again, it's not about feeling selfish when you say no or feeling like you're mean or whether you feel guilty that someone else has to carry more. Sometimes it's when you feel like your no is letting other people down. Another form of someone else taking something on, but it's just like, this is more of like when you feel like, oh, if I say no, I'm letting them down. Because let's be honest, so many of us, the idea of disappointing someone else feels heavier than saying yes. And saying yes when we don't feel like saying yes, right? Which is why we ask ourselves, how do I say no without letting people down? You see, the fear behind this question is if I say no, I'm going to let someone down. They're counting on me. They trust me to show up. And if I don't, then maybe I'm not dependable like I say I am. Maybe I'm not who they thought I was. Maybe I'm not who I thought I was, right? So again, you're doubling down on that negative self-talk because this has been your MO to always say yes, not understanding or not giving yourself permission to say no and be clear with your no, be steady and firm with your no. You don't have to be mean. It's just about protecting your time and energy, just like anyone else would do. The people in your life are going to do the same for themselves. Okay, so it's not like you're the only person in the world that would ever do this. It's that inner script again, like I said, where we tell ourselves the only way for us to be worthy of love, of respect, of belonging, of being enough means that we always have to come through, no matter what, no matter the cost to ourselves. But here's what's really happening when you live by that belief. Every time you say yes just to avoid disappointing someone else, you're actually forgetting about a really important person in that equation. And again, I've said this before, but that's you. You see, when you live by this rule that being dependable means saying yes all of the time, and your guilt is driven by not wanting to disappoint someone else, you end up ignoring your gut instinct, you silence your intuition that no is the actual choice, and you end up trading away your time, your your energy, time for rest, time for being focused and present with the people who matter most to you, because your decision's based on keeping someone else comfortable, keeping someone else happy. And ironically, the more you do that, the less dependable you actually feel, because instead of showing up full and steady, you show up stretched thin, distracted, running on fumes, even resentful, because it's become your pattern to ignore what you need. The truth is, letting someone down temporarily is very different from letting yourself down constantly. Let me repeat that because I really think you need to hear this. Letting someone down temporarily is very different from letting yourself down constantly. When you say no, you're not rejecting the other person, right? You're respecting your limits. And that respect is what will allow you to keep showing up in a way that's consistent, reliable, and real, allowing for your intuition, your inner knowing to help you take the lead instead of guilt leading the way. Listen, it's not that you will never disappoint anyone when you say no, especially when they expect you to always say yes, because you always have. And you're expected to always be that dependable yes person. But when you override what you want, you quietly bankrupt your capacity, losing your energy, clarity, and your trust in your own voice, in your own decisions. Meaning you want to protect your peace and still keep the relationships that matter, right? Without having to deplete yourself to do it. So that's why it's really important for you to allow for your voice, your needs, your no's to be heard without guilt, and still feel secure in your relationships, because the people who truly value and care about you, they don't require you to deplete yourself to prove that you care. So here's something you can use the next time that I don't want to let them down feeling presses in. If you know the real answer is, actually, when you know the real answer is no, but guilt starts to talk you into saying yes, try saying something like, I know this is important, but I can't take it on right now without overcommitting. I'd rather be honest with you up front than say yes and not deliver the way I'd want to. Or you could simply say, I can't give this my best right now, but I truly appreciate you trusting me enough to ask. You don't have to explain yourself. I think a lot of the time too, people like say something and then there's like, they start to really like find ways to explain what they mean. And all that does is it has you over explaining, trying to convince them and maybe yourself that you have permission to say no, right? So both of these that I just gave you, they still communicate that you care. And they're not about shutting the door on the other person. They're about keeping your yes honest and your no steady so that you can keep showing up as the person people can actually depend on, not the one who quietly drains herself to avoid the momentary sting of disappointment. Now, if you notice a theme in these questions, you're right. Whether it's worrying that you'll look selfish, feeling guilty afterward for saying no, fearing that your no will make life harder for someone else, or dreading the thought of letting people down, the struggle isn't really about the word no itself, right? The real question, the real weight comes from the meaning that you attach to it. Because when you say no, your brain doesn't just stop at the decision, it spins a whole story. They're going to think I don't care. I'm making life harder for them. I've disappointed someone I love. I'm being really selfish right now. And suddenly, it's not just one no. It's proof, at least in your mind, that you're not being dependable, that you don't care, that you're not a generous and giving person. But here's the truth. Every no you give is also a yes to your energy, a yes to the commitments that actually matter to you and are in alignment with where your focus is at this time in your life, a yes to the relationships that deserve your best instead of your leftovers, right? So the issue isn't that you don't know how to say no. It's that you've allowed yourself to believe that a no means you're less. You're less dependable, less likable, less worthy. When in reality, a no that protects your peace is the very thing that allows your yes to carry more weight, more honesty, and more alignment with the life you actually want to live. And here's what I know. When you strip away all the guilt, all the second guessing, and all the stories you've been carrying about what your no means, what you actually want isn't complicated at all. You want to be able to say no and walk away feeling steady inside. No knot in your stomach, no jolting awake at 2 a.m. with your mind stuck in replay mode, and no backpedaling text message the next morning just to make sure that they're not upset. You want your voice to count as much as anyone else's without having to prove that you care by overextending and burning yourself out in the process. And you want to be able to protect your time, your energy, and your peace of mind without losing connection, respect, or love in the process. Because deep down, it's not about being the person who always says yes, is it? It's not. It's about being the woman who can trust her no and still be seen, still be valued, and still be held in her relationships. That's the real desire underneath all of this. Not just to avoid guilt, but to feel free. Free to say yes or no with clarity and absoluteness without the weight of guilt or shame. Free to choose from clarity instead of pressure, and free to show up fully because you haven't traded away your peace just to keep everyone else comfortable. And here's where I want to zoom out just a little bit after walking through all of these questions with you. The real issue has, again, never just been about the wording of your no, right? About how you say no. It's about how you've been trained to carry it. Because for so many high achieving women like us, actually, I believe women in general, because of our nature, our giving nature, the default has been either say yes, even when it costs you because it feels easier than sitting with guilt, or swing hard the other way, building walls, sounding harsher than you mean to, and feeling disconnected in the process. And neither feels like the version of you that you want to bring into your life, into your work, or into your relationships. Because the truth is, no has never been the real problem. It's the guilt you've been carrying around it, what you've been making it mean about you when you say no. No isn't about shutting people out, not at all. Being able to say no is about keeping yourself steady enough to show up with honesty, without over-explaining yourself, without resentment building in the background, and without trading away your peace. Because when your no is clear, your yes gets stronger. When your energy is protected, your presence deepens. You're present in those moments that you say yes to. When you stop carrying guilt as proof that you care, you start showing up with a confidence that others can actually trust, that you can actually trust. That's the shift I want you to hold on to. It's not about getting tougher. It's about getting clearer. And it's not about proving that you care. It's about trusting that you already do. So let me ask you this. Think back to the last time you said no. Did you walk away with a steady calm, clear that it was the right decision for you? Or did you carry it with you into the night, replaying every word that was said, wondering if you should have softened what you said? Maybe if you should have explained it better, the why behind why you said no, or maybe just given in and said yes. And if that's the loop you've been in, here's the real question. What would change in your life if your no felt just as steady, just as guilt-free, and just as honoring as the moments when you say yes? Because here's the truth. That shift isn't just possible. It's something you can actually practice and learn to embody every day. So if you've been noticing that you've been spending way too much energy on over-explaining yourself, backpedaling your decisions, or replaying conversations in your head instead of standing firm and confident in your decisions, and you're ready for a different way, one that lets you protect your peace without guilt and show up steady in every part of your life, this is exactly the work we do inside the Aligned Self-Mastery Experience. It's about self-acceptance, resilience and energy mastery, and aligned relationships so that you can trust your decisions fully, trusting yourself, protecting your time and energy with confidence, and creating relationships that reflect back the love and support you actually want. And so I've opened up this program for 10 women, and only 10 just so that I can ensure that each woman will get the depth of support she deserves. I want to make sure that the time I use it well to support you. So the way in is through a yes reset strategy call. And on that call, we'll uncover where misaligned yeses are costing you more than they give, map out how to create the filter that keeps you steady, clear, and protected. And if it feels like the right next step, we'll explore whether or not one of those 10 spots is meant for you and something you actually feel called to step into. So you can find the link in the show notes to apply for your call. So now before you go, I want to leave you with something to take with you as you move into your weekend and into the coming week. The moments you've carried the most guilt around saying no, they were never really about the word itself. They were about the story you told yourself afterwards, that your needs didn't matter as much, that someone else's comfort was way more important than your peace. But the truth is, every time you honor your no, you're really saying a bigger yes. A yes to your energy, a yes to your steadiness, a yes to showing up in your life without resentment or second guessing. Because when your no is clean and confident, it doesn't shrink your relationships. It strengthens them. It teaches the people in your life how to meet you where you really are, not where guilt pushes you to be. So carry this with you. Your no has value on its own. It doesn't need an essay. It doesn't need a performance, and it doesn't need to come with guilt. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
You deserve better healthcare, and so do we all. Medicine in America is a podcast that shares real stories of patients and doctors reshaping the future, because the revolution in care isn't coming, it's already here. Real stories, real change, a better future for healthcare.
Electricast. Hi, it's me, Flo. Remember me from Ghost Hampton, the podcast? I was secretly in love with Lyle Hall. Well, now I'm dead and loving it. But let's talk about you. If you loved listening to Ghost Hampton, you can now spend the summer in the Hamptons. The original episodes are back, and now new episodes will be dropping every Friday. I may drop in too, just to make Lyle feel guilty. Ghost Hampton, the podcast, is now streaming everywhere. Electricast.